Hi, this is a short video to talk about the basics of using Microsoft Excel. And this video will cover navigating within the program, recording data, moving things around and formatting your numbers, and then using the formula editor to do simple mathematical operations, including functions like average. And then also a little trick called filling that you maybe used before, maybe not. If you're familiar with all these things, feel free to skip over this video. So let's just go see what Excel looks like when you start it up. The various versions of Excel sometimes look a little bit different. This is what my startup screen looks like, but no matter what your startup screen looks like, you can open a new sheet by either selecting just the good old Excel workbook and hitting choose, or from the file menu you can select new workbook or control N. So this is what your workbook looks like when you open it up. And the first thing to point out is that Excel, as well as Google Spreadsheet and Numbers and OpenOffice, or Office Libre as it's called now, they all function on the same basic idea. These are spreadsheets, and spreadsheets are simply designed to contain numbers and do math for you. You can make them really neat and organized, and it's a great way to hold on to your data. Basic idea here is that you have a whole bunch of little squares called cells, and you can refer to these cells by the combination of the column letter, in this case E, and the row number, in this case 8. So that's E8, this one over here is L15. You'll notice when you click from cell to cell, your column and your row are they're shaded differently. So you can tell what cell you're in just by looking at that. Another couple things to point out just about the program. You can have multiple sheets in one workbook, and I'm using the appropriate terminology here. The whole file is the workbook, and if you press this little plus sign, you can have multiple sheets, and they can maybe each contain an experiment or something like that. Or sometimes you might have a rough draft and then a final draft of your data tables. So that's something to look out for. If your lab partner sends you a spreadsheet and you don't see anything in it, look and make sure you're in the sheet that your lab partner was using. So that's the basics of just looking at the program and sort of moving around. You can move around with the cursor. You can also move around with the down arrows or the left-right arrows. So let's talk about actually inputting your data. Let's say you have a series of volume and mass measurements from your lab, and these are going to be used to calculate density. Now you might be tempted to just start writing down your numbers, and that's basically how you do it, but I really recommend labeling your data, just like you would in your lab notebook. And you'll definitely need that when you then transfer these tables into your lab reports. So, for example, in this lab, you'll be taking a whole bunch of volume measurements in milliliters, so always have your units there, and then a whole bunch of mass measurements in grams. And when I'm done typing, I can either hit Enter or Tab or use one of the arrows, and that'll get me out of that cell that I've been working in. So, to start inputting your data, you just type your numbers. So let's say I used a 10 ml pipette. I can just write 10 for my first measurement there. Now, one thing is a 10 ml pipette is actually accurate to the hundredths place, and so you might write 10.00, hit enter, and then be a little dismayed when it goes back to just 10. It's not showing your sig figs. We'll talk about that after I put in the rest of the data. I usually put in all my data first and then worry about the formatting and the significant figures. So yeah, let's say my 10 ml sample had a mass of 11 grams. I did a 20 ml sample and I had a mass of, let's say, 22.2 grams. My 30 ml sample had a mass of 35. My 40 ml sample had a mass of 45.2. And my 50 ml sample had a mass of 57.89. Now, if I use good pipettes and they're accurate to the hundredths place, I can show those significant figures in this manner. I can highlight all of these cells and then go to Format up here at the very top and hit Format Cells. You'll see a whole bunch of options here. All of these little tabs here are different options that you can look through at your leisure. You can align them in a certain way. One thing I often do is wrap text so that it doesn't go into the next cell. You can change the fonts, but really what's most important is changing the number format. And you'll see there's various options here that you might use in different labs. You can express your numbers in scientific notation to varying numbers of decimal places. You can use percentages. You can use, to express significant figures though, what you'll most often use is the number category. And yeah, if our pipettes are good to the hundredths place, I really want to show this as 10.00. So that's 2 decimal places. You can change this as much as you need to. Oops, go back to 2. My masses, if these were all taken with our centigram balances, I want to show that that hundredths place is also significant, so I'll do the same thing here. And number, 2 decimal places. Okay, so that looks a little bit better for starting out. One other thing is oftentimes when you're recording your data, you sometimes want to add a line or move things around. For moving things around, it's just like other Microsoft products like Word. You can cut and paste, and so those commands are under Edit, Cut, Copy, Paste. You can also just use the little icons that are here, so that's Cut, and if I want to paste it over here, I can do that with the paste icon, so that moves it. One thing I often find myself doing is inserting a row. And I might want to do that because let's say I took 3 measurements of the mass. I did 3 triplicate measurements. If I want to insert a row to say, well, I'm going to have trial 1, trial 2, trial 3 for the masses, I highlight the row that I want to below the new one that I want to put in, and then I just go to Insert Row, and it puts an extra row in there for me. So then I can do trial 1. Oops. I forgot to type the 1, and just to point this out, when you need to edit your typing, if you misspelled something or mistyped it, you can do that here in this little bar. Trial 1, trial 2, and trial 3. So I'll just do the data. I'll just put in trial 1, 2, and 3 for this first one. Let's say my second trial was 11.33. and my third one was 11.18. So this is the start of a good-looking spreadsheet. Few other things to point out here. Really powerful function in Excel is the ability to do simple math. Oftentimes when you have triplicate data or 3 trials of something, you want to know the average. And we all probably know that the average is the sum of these 3 trials divided by how many trials there were, 3. And so you can calculate the average in that way. The way to type that out would be to start with an equal sign. Whenever you're going to do some math, you start with an equal sign. And then start with an open parentheses. And you can just click on the cell that you want to do your math on. So if I want to add these guys all together, I'll click on cell G8 plus H8 plus, I'm just typing those little pluses, I8. Close parentheses, that way Excel knows that those things are all being added up together, divided by 3. So I use the slash to do divided by, the asterisk for multiplication, plus and minus for plus and minus. So that gives me an average. There's even a quicker way to do it though, and I'll just use a different cell so you can compare them. An even quicker way to do it, averages are so common in all sorts of industries and businesses that Excel knows how to do that. So you can tell Excel to take the average of those 3 trials, by simply starting with your equal sign. We always use that for doing math. And then typing in the word average. And a whole bunch of functions usually pop up as you start typing that match what you're typing. And so Excel can do lots of complicated statistical work. You don't need to do any of these fancy average functions. Just the simplest thing that looks like what you're trying to do is usually the right one. So it then pops up as equals average, and you've got these parentheses here. And you want to tell it which numbers to average. And one way to do that is to just highlight and select the values you want to average together. So I want to average together trial 1, 2, and 3. And just by putting my cursor over the first one, clicking, and then pulling across, I'm telling it to do that. You can also type G8 colon I8, and it'll average that range of the three values. And then press enter. So I got the same number. That's good. Now let's go ahead. I'm just going to delete that since it's the same number as before. Now I'm going to go ahead and calculate the density in grams per mil. And here, again, with doing math, you start with an equal sign. Got my average mass in grams, and I'm going to divide that by my volume in mils. And that gives me my density. So doing simple math like that is super easy in Excel. You can also, let me just fill in a couple more values here, 22.3, 22.6, and you can also automate some of these things that you're doing, so you don't need to type in those math functions over and over again. If I have a whole bunch of data here, 36, 34, 43, 44, 51, 52, if I want to take the average of trials 1, 2, and 3 for each of these measurements for the 20, 30, 40, and 50 mil experiments, I can do that really easily. I don't even have to type in average again. I can just grab the blue box here at that bottom right corner where you see that little blue box. If I put my cursor right over that little blue box, you see a kind of dark bolded cross right there. If I then pull down that little box to the bottom of my data, it fills in the average function for all of those volume experiments. Can do the same thing for the density. Just FYI, if it's just a number rather than a function that you have in there, you can still do filling, but if I'm just filling, let's say a new number, let's say 100, if I'm just filling 100 down, it'll just type 100 a whole bunch of times, which is sometimes useful. Sometimes you need to write down the same thing over and over again. So the fill function is really helpful. So those are just a couple Excel basics. The next video will cover graphing this data.